Tai Tuivasa is an animal. That's a great fight. That guy's crazy.
That's him, the bloke from the area who represents Australia in his heart and on his sleeve. An absolute cult hero both nationally and globally, known for his infamous shoey and larrikin attitude. He wasn't born into stardom. His journey has been at times incredibly turbulent, but also inspiring. This is the story of Australia's #1 UFC heavyweight, Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa.
Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa!
We start off in what is known as the area. And by the area, I mean Mount Druitt. It's recognised as one of the most notorious hoods in Sydney, and although the reports of crime in the area are often overblown, Tuivasa would be involved in that lifestyle and from an incredibly young age. Growing up in Housing Commission, also recognised as being a houso, Tai was born into a dangerous and low socio-economic situation. At the age of 7 he would steal his first car, and at 8 was exposed to the use of heroin, as he watched others. Born an Indigenous Australian and Samoan, he grew up a minority who was one of 11 other siblings, and out of those 11 siblings, he was the only one with a white complexion, and often was mistaken as white. He says he often fought other islanders to gain the respect of them, and figured quickly that fighting was almost a necessity if he was to be taken seriously. Fighting was a lifestyle for Tai in Western Sydney. It was not something he chose to become. Street fighting was just what he did and who he was. In school, Tai proclaims he was smart, but also a rat bag, as he got kicked out of high school at 17, but really wasn't bothered by it at the time. And he had good reason not to be bothered by it, as he was one of the more highly touted NRL prospects. By 17, Tuivasa had made every junior representative team through every age group, initially signing for the Penrith Panthers in their Harold Matthews side. Tuivasa would be scouted by recruitment guru Peter O'Sullivan, and would move east to the Sydney Roosters, training with the first grade squad, where he was amongst the same young crop as Dylan Napa, Boyd Cordner and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. It would be Tai's first venture away from Western Sydney, and it's safe to say things didn't go too well. Known for getting sent off and having a loud mouth, Tuivasa did not fit into the Sydney Roosters system, and for the most part didn't enjoy his experience there. His breaking point was after a night out on the pokies, where he would lose a staggering $20,000 in one night. He realised how much he hated his current situation and told coach Jason Taylor that he'd be leaving the team and returning back to Mount Druitt. On his return to Western Sydney, Tai would reunite with friends and family and was enjoying life again. Tai and his mates would spot the UFC on TV one day. Like many of us, he watched the UFC and thought he could do it himself. He had seen his older mates and cousins get caught in a life of crime, serving prison sentences, and felt like his life was on the same trajectory. Tuivasa would say, "We're punching on every day here in the streets. Might as well go and see if anyone else can really punch on." After realising the possibility of being able to make money whilst fighting, which was a regular occurrence for him anyways, he signed up to an MMA gym the next day.
You've only had 2 fights in the UFC, but 2 big finishes, the crowd's loving you. How much of an impact do you think you've made so far in just 2 fights?
At least 50k impact.
Tuivasa would realise that his fighting abilities transferred professionally, and would work on his ability, making his pro MMA debut in 2012 and pro boxing debut in 2013. Over the next 4 years, Tuivasa fought sporadically, labelling this period as just around, doing what I wanted to do. Although nonchalant during the years following his NRL departure, he was still carving up national competition in the MMA. Tai would elevate his career with 4 straight MMA fight wins in various Australian competitions, of course all by first round knockout, absolutely obliterating his opponents. Tai's most notable win was probably his defeat of John Hopewadi in a mixed rules MMA bout. This didn't necessarily prove his ability, but was his first headline fight that got his name into the mainstream. Tuivasa would venture into boxing and kickboxing to varying success, but stuck ultimately with MMA. He loved to just fight and often would with a few days' notice, which built his name quickly in Australian MMA. Tuivasa's training regime and fitness was pretty lackluster at the time, and often Tuivasa was just called into his fights as a blow-in earlier in his career. Tuivasa was not on any clear trajectory to what he wanted his career to be, and although undefeated, it kind of stagnated. He proclaims his defining moment, and what changed his career trajectory was finding out that his partner would be pregnant with his son Carter, which is what fueled him on the road to the UFC.
About time I woke up to myself and
trained hard and pursue this as a proper career.
The following year, he would win the Australian Fighting Championship belt in destructive fashion. He would defend his title the following event, but would suffer a significant knee injury in the process. At this point, he was the hottest Aussie MMA heavyweight prospect and would be given a 4-fight contract with the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Recovering from his knee injury, he would debut in the UFC just over a year later against Rashad Coulter. This debut would be extra special as he got to fight in front of his home fans in Sydney, Australia, and it's safe to say that Bam Bam Tuivasa would not disappoint. A devastating flying knee sent Coulter to the floor, and Tuivasa would win his 7th consecutive fight, knocking out his opponent within the first round. Bam Bam's display would win him a cool 50 grand, as he would win the performance of the night and would become the first Indigenous Australian to win in the UFC. Only 3 months later would Tuivasa return to the octagon, this time against Cyril Asker, and again he would finish things in the first round with some brutal punches and elbows. This win would put him on the UFC's official heavyweight rankings in 15th spot, and would be followed up with a shot at former heavyweight champion Andrei Arlovski, in what would be Tai's toughest matchup yet. Tuivasa and Arlovski slugged it out for 3 whole rounds, with the fight going to a decision. It was the first time Tai would get opened up in the UFC, and the first fight in his MMA career to go to a decision. In a fight that could have gone either way, Tuivasa won by unanimous decision, extending his UFC win streak to 3 and his MMA record to 9 wins and no losses. His rise at this point had been meteoric. He would find himself inside the top 10 in the UFC heavyweight rankings. It was not only what he was doing in the ring that was impressing, but Tuivasa was bringing personality to the heavyweight division. An Aussie larrikin who loves just being himself, UFC fans were becoming enamoured by Bam Bam. In particular, the Shui, an Aussie tradition that Tuivasa had brought into the global light. Tai's post-fight celebration of downing a Shui was becoming so viral that he would collaborate with Reebok. Tuivasa would also win the 2018 National Dreamtime Award for the International Sportsperson of the Year, an award that meant a lot to Tuivasa, who was incredibly prideful of his Indigenous heritage. Only 3 fights into Bam Bam's career and Bam Bam looked the goods. A young marketable star with knockout power who is capable of going the distance, he looked like he was on the path to superstardom.
Random question. How many Shuis do you think you've done in your lifetime?
I don't know how many times the priest been to church.
Things would change over the next year though, as Tai Tuivasa would face former world champion Junior Dos Santos in Adelaide, Australia. Tai Tuivasa and Junior Dos Santos would be the main event of UFC Fight Night, a testament to the following Tuivasa had grown. A win would put him in the upper echelon of contenders in the heavyweight division, and things started off well with Tai throwing bombs which connected with Dos Santos. Ultimately, Tai would eat a right hook and would lose via TKO, his first loss of his MMA career. Although a disappointing result, a loss against a heavyweight great was nothing to be embarrassed about, and was expected to look like a small blip in the long-term career of Tai Tuivasa. Unfortunately, this would not be the case. Tai would suffer another 2 losses, putting him on a 3-fight losing streak. A unanimous decision loss where Tuivasa tied early, and a second-round submission where Tai tapped in front of an Australian crowd, would put his career at an all-time low. Going from a future star to suffering 3 consecutive losses showed the fragility of the fight game.
And there is the ringmaster, Tai Tuivasa. I'm told his beer tolerance is pretty good, so right out of Cowboys boots.
There were talks that Tuivasa's next fight may be his last, if he was to lose, as the UFC often has little patience with struggling fighters. Knowing things were at a desperate point, Tai would move his training camp from Australia to the American Kickboxing Academy in California, one of the pioneering schools in martial arts. Prominent fighters like Khabib Nurmagomedov, BJ Penn, and Daniel Cormier were all based from this school. It was actually Daniel Cormier himself that reached out to Bam Bam Tuivasa, with the two already friends. Tai felt he was too comfortable in Australia and needed to move, saying, "I just got comfortable. I work best when I'm uncomfortable. Just sitting still, getting comfortable, making stupid decisions business-wise and whatnot. That's what I've been doing." Tuivasa's move to the USA meant he would have to leave his son Carter and family at home, but it was an effort to revitalise his career, which he sure did against Stefan Struve on UFC's Fight Island. It was now or never for Tai Tuivasa, as he hoped to reap the benefits of his new training camp. It was an outstanding finish for Tai Tuivasa, unloading a barrage of punches, finishing it off with a mean uppercut, stopping the fight with only 2 seconds left in the first round. It was a typical Bam Bam battering, and Tai was back saving his UFC career from the brink of extinction. Tai wanted to continue to learn and would add multiple training camps, which included the AKA camp in California, the Tiger Muay Thai camp in Phuket, and the TK MMA and Fitness in Abu Dhabi, as Tai would make the sacrifice to stay overseas due to Australia's tough COVID restrictions, allowing Tai to continue to train and fight. Going into 2021, Tai had just saved his career, but looked far removed from the star prospect he was once touted to be. The thing is, Tuivasa cared little about the high stakes, remarking that fighting in the UFC was a luxury for him. He was born to fight and loved what he did. This attitude meant Tai seemed rarely fazed by anything when it came to trash talk or nerves. His genuine and down-to-earth nature had made Tai a fan favourite, even if his record hadn't been as flash lately. Tai would again make easy work of his next opponent, Harry Handsucker, knocking him out with an overhand right in just 49 seconds. Tai's mix of personality and knockout power meant Tai was a positive addition to any fight card. He was what fans wanted to see, and now on a 2-fight win streak, Tai Tuivasa would get himself onto the second biggest pay-per-view of 2021 at UFC 264, headlined by Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. Tai would face Greg Hardy, another enigma who played professionally in the NFL. Like Bam Bam, he was a stand-up guy, with the fight expected to be finished by a knockout. It would only take just over a minute of action before we got our verdict. A Hardy right hand stung Tuivasa. With his legs wobbling, Tai returned 2 huge shots as Hardy approached and finished Hardy in insane fashion. Tai almost taps into his street fighting nature here as he gets hit by Hardy, pulling up the shorts, and with a wry smile absolutely obliterates Hardy. It's these moments that just show you that Tai really just loves to throw hands, and is a fighter by nature rather than profession. Tuivasa was now officially back to his destructive knockout ways and would be paired up against Brazilian Augusto Sakai in a fight that would push him back into the top 10 in the rankings if he was to win. Tai in this fight would drop Sakai, this time in the second round, and would pull off the hardest shoey I think we've ever seen, catching a shoe with one hand and a beer in the other while sitting on top of the cage. What an absolute savage. This win, like the fight with Hardy, would earn him the Performance of the Night award, as he continued to entertain both inside and outside of the ring. He was back amongst the elite heavyweight contenders and would be paired up against number 3 heavyweight Derek Lewis, who is also an entertainment machine, known for his knockout power, and for probably being the most likeable fighter in the UFC outside of Tuivasa.
I'm here with the winner, Derek Lewis. Derek, why'd you take your pants off?
My balls was hot.
I understand.
This was easily Tai's biggest fight in terms of hype and stature. A win would put him in contention for a title shot, and this fight showed the resilient nature of Bam Bam, who against Derek Lewis was facing an absolute tank with extreme knockout power. Tai was taken down twice in the first round, and on the end of some vicious ground and pound which most fighters would submit to. He would survive the round, but yet again was on the back foot in the second round on the end of some excellent Muay Thai by Lewis and looked rocked. Tai responded though with some big punches and some big elbows and would put Lewis swiftly on the canvas before performing another famous shoey. Tai's performance earned him another Fight of the Night bonus, and he's now recognised as not just an entertainer, but a proven heavyweight contender. Tai Tuivasa is now a cult figure who is down to earth in his nature and is close to both his Samoan and Indigenous Australian roots. Even when he's jamming out to the Spice Girls or Barbie Girl during his walkouts, he always carries a flag and represents his heritage. Even in the ring, his power, a traditional Samoan tattoo, covers the whole lower body from his waist to the knees, which is done through the process of taping, a method that consists of using serrated bone combs attached to tortoise shell fragments with a mallet to drive the combs into the skin. The process is slow, meticulous, and extremely painful. Often done over a couple of weeks, this is one of the more painful processes known to man. Tai Tuivasa is relatable and genuine, someone who grew up from the area and could not care less about others' opinions. His mix of marketability and MMA skill make him one of the more popular UFC fighters on the roster. Honestly, the sky is the limit for Tai Tuivasa, and no matter the outcome of the remainder of his career, Australia will always be behind him. So that is all for this mini documentary on the amazing rise of Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa. His journey from Sydney's outer suburbs to the UFC has been truly remarkable and an inspiration to many. A lot of hours went into this video, so I'd be grateful if you could press that like button and subscribe if you want more of these mini documentaries. As always, thank you for watching.